Hello and welcome to this lecture. I'm going to be talking about the nature of conflict. The nature of conflict. It's something usual what we have as part of our life. We have conflicts. So conflicts can constitute one element of our social life, of our political life. We do face conflicts in many aspects of our life. What we study in this course is not about conflict in a political shape or nature. No, we do study conflict in terms of social elements and economic and business in different environments and different aspects of life. So we're gonna look at the nature of conflict and how we can view it. In fact, in fact, what we have, everybody of us, at least once in a life or twice or even many times, we do are faced with different types of conflicts. But then how we deal with it, how we handle the conflicts. Can we manage it? Can we have a solution to the conflict? That is the point which is really necessary and needed to be understand how to deal with the conflict. It's that where some people think it's unusual to have a conflict. No, it's an element of our life. It's a symbolic of the nature of a human being living side by side with other people. So how we view conflict is not the same. I can view conflict in one way that somebody else cannot see it in that way. A conflict is a perception, as we're going to see in a few minutes' time. Perception that we can perceive it in a way that other people can see it in a different way. So the view of a conflict, it depends on the person or and the entity or the community or the ethnicity. But then I can be in a conflict where somebody else who engaging in the same conflict can deny it completely. It's how we can see it, how we can view it. This is really important to understand. Then it is important that we have to look at the roots of conflict. Where the conflict come from, how they have been caused, who caused the conflict, the roots of the conflict, as we're going to look at, could be ethnic conflict, economic conflict, political conflict, and so on and so forth. We're going to look at these in more details in other lectures. But then again, how to handle conflict, this is one of the topics we have to look at again in the next lectures. How we handle conflict is not the same. It depends on the individual at the social level, it depends on political level, what kind of conflict this could be, and who is handling the conflict. Some people can live with it. Other people cannot live with it and would like to have solution to end such kind of conflict in their own life. So conflict to be handled with and dealt with by some people, it is based on who is dealing with the conflict. In this lecture, I'm not trying to dedicate anything on the audience and telling you exactly what method we can use in this regard. It all depends on your choice. If you would like to live with that conflict and manage it in different directions and different ways, as we're going to look at management of conflicts later, or if you would like to have an end. And it's not something really possible always in many situations to have an end to the conflict, but then again, we have methods such as negotiations, mediations, communications, adjudications, and we have to look at them. But then you can choose, it depends on the type of conflict. So not every method is applicable to that kind of type of conflict. Again, the assumption is important. The assumption. How we make, when you look at any conflict, look at the political conflicts in different places in the world. What kind of assumptions we make? Now, if you look at the Yemeni conflict, for example, how do you see it? If you would like to handle such conflict and have a solution of managing that conflict, then it depends on the assumption each side can see. And it depends on the mediator, if it's the United Nations or somebody else, how they understand such kind of conflict. The first assumptions, who's right and who's wrong, is it this way? We will look at it. Or we will look at it as like benefits or interests or values. So the assumption we make initially concerning any type of conflict is really important to understand how we deal with it. The assumption, that kind of idea we have made in our minds, the perception we have made, it is important to lead the direction of this kind of conflict. In fact, in many cases, we would like to complicate our thinking, complicate our thinking to be able to understand more about whatever conflict, the type of conflict, the elements of the conflicts, the segments, the components, the directions, the history. These kind of points, we have to understand them by trying to complicate, such as escalate. Escalation could be one of the points where we can understand more about the conflict by more escalation. Sometimes what you have to do is just to shake the ground or trying to pull the trigger to move such kind of conflict to a higher level, to push parties to react more, to have more escalation, and that kind of escalation can lead to more understanding of kind of conflict. And this would lead to somehow better focus. Focus. We have to focus on the conflict to understand the directions and the mechanism of moves and ways and methods of such kind of conflicts. The focus, when you really zoom in, trying to understand every single element by who are the parties to the conflict, what the reasons, if they're going to be ethnic conflict, economic conflict, ideological conflict, or how can we find a way, a middle ground to that conflict. It depends on how much we can focus in and zoom to understand those little elements. You know what I mean, is trying to dismantle the conflict into little components and points, dismantle the conflict to understand every single point of this kind of conflict, so that we need focus much on that kind of conflict. Then how do we experience conflict? Meaning, what is a conflict exactly? What is a conflict? When you think about it, what is a conflict? What can constitute a conflict? I know that so many people can understand it in different ways, but then how can I say if I am in a conflict or not? It depends on my understanding, yes. It depends on my feeling, okay. It depends on my action as well. So we can experience conflict in different ways, mostly in 3 different shapes. One is perception. 2 is feeling, and 3 is action. So conflict could be perception, that we believe, we think, we made our minds. Conflict can be a feeling. It's like when you agitate somebody, when you're teasing up somebody, when you have hate, incitement. That is about feeling. And the most feasible is action, behavior. That's what we can see. But what we cannot see is the perception and the feeling. These are the most dangerous types of conflicts. But the one we can see, the physical behavior, that is simplistic one. Then we have to deal with every single way to understand, first of all, if this is a conflict or not. Meaning, if we can diagnose the situation, this is a conflict, that will be much easier for me and for you to understand how to deal with this kind of conflict. So, trying to identify and understand the conflict as a perception. One, this is firstly, perception. Conflict as a perception, yes, it can be. Like when I believe that I am in a conflict with somebody, do believe in this. This is in mine. I made my mind, even though it could be the second party is not in the same conflict. Could it be one way? Yes. Conflict could be one way, meaning like I have been engaged in a conflict psychologically, understanding and believing that I am in a conflict. Then this is perceptual. This is perception. And this depends, always depends on the needs, the interests, the wants, the values, the incompatibility between one another. But then my perception about one way, you could be in the working place or the social aspects with somebody in the same family or friendship, in a conflict with somebody, having the weight and the perception to believe that you have been that. When you compete with somebody, competition is fine. You can compete definitely, but then that competition could be sometimes turned into a conflict when we do have that belief, perception that I have to take it, I have to do my best, I have to be trying to focus onto my own interests and values and needs at the expense of the others. By taking actions or not taking action, that's a different way and a different story. But the main story in this case is we think and we believe this is a conflict, then it is a conflict in this case, even if the other party does not believe or is not engaged in such conflict. This is the first type. The second type of conflict could be feeling, yes, somebody feel. You know that we are human beings. We have blood, flesh, bones, minds, psychology. We do have feelings. What can distinguish one another is the feeling between me and you. We're not the same. Not everybody is the same like somebody else. Feeling can cause a conflict. When you feel hate, when you have incitement with somebody, when you have insulted, when you are insulted by somebody else, you have that kind of feeling inside you that something's happened to you. That something happened to you, hurt you in your soul, in your body, that something can cause you rage and can cause you to take action sometimes. Well, then we do have sometimes even using the same method. Feeling could escalate the conflict or de-escalate the conflict. Emotion is very, very important. We have seen many incidents where hate crimes within different societies, incitements from one another, one ethnicity against another. It could be even within the same working place. People are not competing, but people trying to use that kind of difference between them as a source of hate. This can generate conflict definitely. So being upset, angry, that can cause much of the conflict. This can be used later on, we're going to see, as one of the methods to de-escalate the conflict. We will look at this how in more details. And the third type of understanding conflict as physical conflict. This is the obvious, the one we can see, the one we can witness. Physical conflict exists almost everywhere. Ethnic conflicts, political, economic, ideological, and so on and so forth. Those type of conflicts, you can see them physical, having an assault, actions, insult, verbal communications, physical, different ways and means, that kind of behavior. That behavior you can see obvious. And I think this could be the minimal type of conflict. This could be the minimal type of conflict where we think that when parties and people engage in a physical conflict, this could be the outmost or the peak. No, this is not. The most dangerous is the feeling and the perception. The feeling and the perception. When it comes to the physical, this is the minimal element. We can easily handle the physical by having ceasefire or having cessation to the action or behavior. We have limitation on the action itself, stop the assault, but then we have to treat the other elements of the conflicts. Then, can we have in one conflict more than one dimensions? Can we have more than one way to understand the conflict at the same time? Can we have the dimensions of the conflict, including physical, emotional, and perception? Yes. You do have at the same time you have the physical. We have many cases of many conflict. I'm not going to be easy trying to have some examples here because this is recorded, and I don't want to be like talking specifically about one case in the world. But then physical action could be a translation of the perception. So you have perception that you believe in antagonism, hostility with somebody else, and then you translate this into action by beating somebody, insulting somebody, or verbal by assaulting somebody. Same thing, the emotion could be translated into action. So you could have looked at the dimensions of this kind of conflict to be able to deal with it. The most important thing is like predictability or unpredictability. Potential conflict. Do we have conflicts in the world? We have almost in every place and continent. We have conflicts. Almost every human being has some kind of conflicts in different stages of life. But how to deal with this conflict, this is important. Can we live with them? Yes, we can. Some people cannot live with conflicts. But then the predictability of a conflict, then can we know exactly if you're going to face a conflict tomorrow or after a few weeks? Can we pretend to live in peaceful situation while we are living in conflict? What is the potential of conflict between, let's say, China and the United States? We have economic conflicts. We have currency conflicts. We have between Saudi Arabia and Iran, we have a conflict, but this is not a physical conflict. It is perceptual and somehow feeling, emotional, both, but has not been translated physically between the two countries, even though we have a proxy war. And you understand what the proxy war is. But then that kind of potential physical conflict between the two entities, between the two states, that could be happening anytime. Same, this is not only limited to this kind of examples. This could be at the individual level where you're working in one place, then you're going to be living in somehow peaceful environment. This could be turned upside down one day, suddenly for whatever reason. It could be for emotion, for perceptual, it could be for physical action could be taken. Then the potential of the conflict is always there. Potential conflict. Then you have to take into consideration that it's not going to be simple to live in peaceful situation without having the ability to think what tomorrow can bring to you and how much conflict can you face with and how you can deal with that conflict, what kind of conflicts. Okay, so this kind of way of understanding the type of conflicts that can help you much to deal with them. A question we will look at later in other lectures is that do we really have to give up and say, well, conflict is really part of our life and keep it as it is and live with it? Yes, if you would like, this is fine. As long as you can live your life happily with whatever situation, because nobody is free from conflicts. Let's talk about other cases and about other things later on in different lectures. Thank you for now. Bye.